All right, hello everyone. Once again, my name is Cassandra Flandre Nguyen, and welcome to our delegate training. If we could go to the next slide, and I'll pass it off to Sean.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Sean Roskopf. I'm an intern with SSCCC. I'll be presenting as well with Cassandra today. Just going to go over some basic housekeeping rules first. So this training is being recorded and will be archived on the Student Senate YouTube channel. So if you missed something and you're not sure, you want to go back and look at the content, it'll be uploaded there probably within a few days. Live transcription has been turned on. All audience members are on mute. If you do want to be recognized, type your name or identifier in the chat, and then Dr. Adams will be able to call your name and unmute you. We ask those that are not students respectfully to allow only students to speak. If you have a question, you're free to type it in the chat and it will be asked at an appropriate time. All right, we can move to the next slide.
So as mentioned before, the two presenters today will be Sean Roskopf, who is a student intern with SSCCC, alongside me, Cassandra Flandre Nguyen, who is also a student intern with that. And again, please feel free, if you have any questions, please jot them down or send them privately to Dr. Adams. We will have time throughout the presentation to ask questions, just so that we can create those dedicated spaces for you all. So in the meantime, we're going to move on to the next slide.
All right, so this is our agenda for today. We're going to go over a review of what is SSCCC. Some of you might be familiar. It's okay. It'll be a little review session for you. If you're not, we'll go over kind of who we are and what we do. We'll also go into delegate job duties, so you're prepared for this upcoming academic year. We'll do a quick Robert's Rules training and then a quick Brown Act training as well, so you're prepared to utilize those tools in your regional meetings this upcoming year. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so first and foremost, what is SSCCC? So the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, or colloquially known as SSCCC, because quite frankly, that is a very long name. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we represent all 2 million students in the California Community College system. So that means that if you know anyone who has been registered at a community college in California, we represent them. We also represent you as a community college student, and our bandwidth is to ensure that we are officially representing just all of the interests of the 2 million students, and we're actually recognized in EdCode as the official voice as well. Next slide.
All right, so SSCCC has 3 pillars: system participatory governance, legislative and policy advocacy, and then regional support. That first pillar kind of encompasses our ability to provide recommendations on policy decisions that impact students. We also appoint students to over 30 participatory governance groups in the state of California. So you might be familiar with some of those processes on your own campus. That also happens at the statewide level. The legislative and policy aspect means that we introduce, sponsor, and advocate for legislative measures. We also act as the collective voice of students at the Capitol. So we will have lobby days and lobbying sessions, or not, excuse me, legislative visits and legislative visit sessions where we'll bring students up to the Capitol and they'll be able to speak about their experiences to legislators. We also provide regional support, so resources, trainings like these, and regional engagement opportunities are pretty common in the SSCCC. Each region has different regional officers, which I'll kind of touch on in a minute. But that's to make sure that each student in each college at each region feels that they have a voice to be able to turn to someone and make sure that their regional interests are also represented. So next slide, please. All right, so we're going to start off with delegate job duties. So next slide, thank you. So what is a delegate? A delegate is an individual that attends the region meetings and acts as a liaison between the SSCCC and the SSBA and the SSCCC. They bring forward issues of concern, vote on actions during the regional meetings, and engage with other delegates. So each college has a delegate. Like it says there, the delegates will bring forward, concerns, comments, questions from the SBA, and engage with the SSCCC, who kind of deals with, a larger scope at a statewide level. So you'll see delegates engage both at the region and at the statewide level, mainly through General Assembly, which again we'll touch on later in the presentation. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so touching a bit on the general roles and responsibilities that are expected of you as a delegate. So first and foremost, as Sean mentioned earlier, you will be serving as an SBA or known as the Student Body Association Liaison. So again, we'll be elaborating on each of these points in much more detail later in the presentation, but just to give a quick summarization. So as an SBA liaison, you are the person who connects your school with the SSCCC region that you are in. So how you'll be doing this is by submitting a delegate report every month at the regional meetings. You also will be ensuring you're listening to what issues your SBA is focusing on and bringing that forth to the region in the regional meetings. You also will be involved in resolution writing, also reporting out to your SBA on what is going on in the SSCCC regional meetings, so on and so forth. And then another part is meetings and events. So for meetings and events, there are some mandatory meetings that are expected of you as a delegate to participate in. So first one being the regional delegate assembly that occurs monthly. And then next is going to be if you are assigned to a regional internal committee, you will also be expected to attend the regional internal committee that you are assigned to, which again happens every month starting in October. And then after that, you're also expected to attend General Assembly as you'll be serving as the college delegate that will vote at General Assembly on behalf of your college. And then finally, the stipends. So as a delegate, when you filled out the delegate verification form, you would have gotten a portion of the form that stated for you to fill out a specific tax form. And what that will ensure is making sure that we're able to get that $100 stipend to you. Next slide.
All right, so to kind of go into more detail, the mandatory regional meetings that you'll be attending are the delegate assembly meetings and the regional committee meetings. So delegate assembly meetings happen at least once per month. Sometimes they'll happen more often, depending on the needs of the region. They'll be chaired by your regional affairs director, who's kind of the student leader of the region and will be your point person of contact. If you don't have a RAD, or if your RAD is unable to make the meeting for some reason, then your vice chair of your region will be taking over chairing of the meeting. That information can also be found on the SSCCC website under regions. You'll be able to see the names and the contact info of each officer. The voting body is made up of, so regional officers don't vote in the delegate assembly. It's just the delegates. So that's very important. You're the one giving your vote and your voice at those meetings. It's also where the discussion of regional activities takes place. So SBA events, any relevant political activity or board of trustees activity, that kind of thing. You want to make sure you bring that to the attention of the delegate assembly. Delegates are also required to submit written reports to the delegate assembly each month. And later in this presentation, we will, or sorry, on the next slide, actually, we'll have an example of what that looks like, and how to submit that. So you also have regional committee meetings. So those also occur at least once per month, again, depending on the need of the region, the committee. Those will be chaired by regional officers. There's several different regional committees, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit later again. But you can kind of, ask to be assigned to which one is your preference. Delegates must be assigned to at least one regional committee, and more in-depth discussion of SSCCC activities takes place here. So, for example, in the Legislative Affairs Committee at a region level, you might be doing bill research or setting up legislative meetings, legislative visits with different legislators, both at the statewide level and maybe at the local level as well. You could be talking to board of trustees members as well. For the communications committee, you might be helping put together newsletter content, that kind of thing. So it's really a way to bring delegates into the conversation, so that the operations of the SSCCC at a regional level aren't just happening by the regional officers, but that students from each campus are actually engaged in that process. Delegates can also be committee vice chairs. So that's one thing to note. Once you're assigned to these committees, you'll have your first meeting in your region, and during that meeting, you can choose to run for a vice chair position if you choose. And then committees report back to the DA as well. I'm going to keep a note. So everything's all connected at region level. Next slide, please. All right, so this is a sample of the delegate report. Super simple. Your regional affairs director should be sending you this template. If you haven't been sent the template and your first delegate assembly is coming up, let someone know. Reach out to your regional affairs director if they're not responsive for whatever reason. Reach out to if there's a student intern in your region, or maybe there's another regional officer that you already have a relationship with. then reach out to them and ask them for this template. They'll be able to get it over to you. This is kind of a basic summary of what you've been doing and also things going on at your own college. And it makes, it helps connect the region, as I said before, make sure that the regional officers are aware of what's going on in your region, so that if there are any issues or concerns, or, maybe there are some big events happening, those can be taken up the chain, and either, campus visits can be made, or letters can be written, if there's a problem going on, that kind of thing. So these are looked at by the regional officers, and these are discussed. So it's important to write these, because ultimately you are as we mentioned, the liaison between your college and the SSCCC. So if you don't write these reports, then we don't have any way of knowing what's going on at your campus and with your students. So next slide, please. I'm going to pass it up to Cassandra.
Yeah, so as Sean mentioned earlier, there are these officers called regional officers, and these officers are essentially the representatives of your region, and each of them will have a specific purview in which they operate in. So first and foremost, there's going to be the regional affairs director. The regional affairs director is essentially going to be the point of contact regarding anything about the region. So they'll be the one leading the regional delegate assemblies you'll be attending as a delegate, and they also are going to be serving as the representative, as one of the representatives on the statewide board of directors. Additionally, on top of their expectation of chairing the regional delegate assembly, they also will be expected to chair the regional executive board meetings that occur every month as well. Next, we'll be moving on to the vice chair. So the vice chair is in charge of completing the accountability and stipend reports. The accountability and stipend reports are reports that are required to be completed, reviewed, and approved by the regional delegate assembly or the regional executive board so that you as a delegate can get your stipend in a timely manner. So the vice chair is in charge of completing those. On top of that, the vice chair is in charge of attending the statewide internal affairs committee meetings and are also in charge of hosting and chairing the regional internal affairs committee. Then moving on to the Legislative Affairs Director. So the Legislative Affairs Director is a point of contact regarding all legislative related efforts in the region. So not only will they be in charge of preparing legislative updates for every regional delegate assembly, but they're also going to be serving as the other state region representative on the statewide board of directors, and also will be attending the statewide Legislative Affairs Committee meetings. And on top of that, they'll also be hosting and chairing the Region Legislative Affairs Committee. Then will be the treasurer. So the treasurer is going to be in charge of all things money regarding the region. So they're in charge of managing the regional budget and presenting updates at the regional delegate assemblies. And on top of that, they're also going to be serving as a representative at the statewide regional finance and fundraising committee meetings. And on top of that, hosting their own region finance committee meeting as well. Then finally, there is the communications officer. The communications officer is in charge of all things social media, marketing campaigns for the region, so on and so forth. They're also in charge of creating and disseminating out the regional monthly newsletter. And the regional newsletter is essentially a visually pleasing format of which you'll get updates on what the region is doing, see a spotlight on a specific SBA, get the contact information for your regional officers, so on and so forth. Now, on top of these responsibilities, the communications officer is also tasked with attending the statewide communications committee meetings, and then, of course, hosting and chairing their own region communications committee meetings. So these officers, it's really important for you as a delegate to be aware of who to go to for any question. But if all else fails and you don't remember who to go to for what, you can always go directly to your regional affairs director, and they'll at the very least be able to direct you to who to talk to. So say you have a question about an Instagram post idea that you have, then you would typically go to the communications officer. But if you don't remember who it is, or if there is a vacancy in that role, then you can just ask your regional affairs director, as again, they are the point of contact regarding all things about the region. We can move on to the next slide. So I mentioned earlier about these regional committee meetings that the regional officers will have to host. Now, as a delegate, and as we mentioned before, you will be expected to serve on at least one regional internal committee. So these are the 5 regional committees that we have available. First is going to be the executive board. So this one does not allow for delegates to serve on it. However, we strongly encourage for delegates to attend as a member of the public because the executive board meetings are where your accountability and stipend reports and deductions will be discussed and approved. So if you want to make sure your regional officers are properly doing their job duties and you are just simply curious about what's going on regarding the accountability and stipend reports or any other efforts they undertake, feel free to attend the executive board meetings. Now, the Internal Affairs Committee meeting. This is the Internal Affairs Committee meeting is actually in charge of facilitating the development of training materials for the region on different topics. And on top of that, the Internal Affairs Committee will also be tasked with helping create and review the regional accountability and stipend reports, and also developing regional policies and other internal affairs matters as assigned by the General Delegate Assembly. So the next one is going to be the Legislative Affairs Committee on the region level. This committee is charged with developing, monitoring, and implementing the legislative priorities of the SSCCC on the regional level. Other duties that the Legislative Affairs Committee will have is to provide advocacy and training resources, engage in the legislative process, communicate SSCCC's priorities and positions to legislators through the method of, scheduling local representative visits with each other, making sure that at delegate assembly, delegates are aware of, oh, we visited so-and-so representative and then we talked about this, and ultimately making sure that their legislative affairs director is aware of the issues that their region is talking about, so that way they can bring it back up to the statewide legislative affairs committee. Moving on, next is going to be the finance committee. So the Finance Committee is charged with amending regional financial processes as needed, and they're also in charge of assisting the treasurer, who is the chair of the Finance Committee, with developing the annual regional budget and also with the development of regular financial reports that are needed. They also will have another assignment of, identifying fundraising needs and possibilities and planning fundraising activities within the region and providing consultation to the treasurer on statewide projects. So as I mentioned earlier, the treasurer serves as the region representative on the statewide region finance and fundraising committee. So the treasurer and quite frankly, the rest of these regional officers who chair a regional committee should be using these committees as a way to get input from you as a delegate and bring that back up to the statewide level. Then finally, for the Regional Communications Committee, the Regional Communications Committee is in charge of helping the communications officer with not only creating and developing the regional monthly newsletter, but also bringing up and brainstorming ideas for how to engage with the different SBAs and the region as a whole on social media, making new marketing campaigns, creating the content calendar, so on and so forth. So that way you can ensure you further drive engagement and outreach amongst the SBAs on social media as well. So all of these committees, except for the executive board, are committees that you as a delegate will be expected to serve on at least one of them. So if you have any interest in them, the regional internal committee assignments will begin at the September delegate assembly or the October delegate assembly. So if you have any further questions, you can always reach out to Sean or I, because we'll be more than happy to help you out with that. But if you also think of other questions, feel free to ask them in our Q&A later in the presentation as well. We go to the next slide.
So we mentioned a couple conferences that you might have to attend or might choose to attend in the future. So I'm just going to go over this quickly. Our first one is Advocacy Academy. That's going to be happening on November 22nd through the 24th this year. This one is not mandatory, but it is encouraged that you go. And these will kind of prepare you for the political landscape, really, of California higher education. So not just the students interested in politics, but also anyone who wants to learn strategies for influencing campus leaders, board of trustees members, city councils, that kind of thing. Really kind of refining those skills. Who do I talk to if I have a question about X? How do I approach the situation, and how do I enter meetings with confidence as well? So that's our Advocacy Academy. By the way, both of these conferences are available not just to delegates, but also to students at large. So these are things you can bring back to your own campuses and your own SBAs or ASGs, whatever you call them, and suggest, hey, this is something that's available. Maybe we want to look into it. potentially make the journey out to Sacramento to attend Advocacy Academy. Also, any of you that have attended in the past can maybe provide some insights to other students that are interested or curious. Then our General Assembly. General Assembly is required. Attendance is required for our delegates. This is where you'll be voting on statewide resolutions. So we'll talk about the resolution process a little bit more in depth later in this presentation. But that's really the bread and butter of what the SSCCC does. It's a written history of the goals and the ideals of the SSCCC and the students really at community colleges across the state, written by students, voted on by students, and ultimately, spoken on by students as well to legislators. So really important that you take part in that process. Our 29th General Assembly is going to be on April 4th, and it'll last until April 6th, 2025, and it'll be in LA as well at the Westin. Yeah, if you have any questions about either of those, let us know. Registration for Advocacy Academy will probably open within the next couple months, so just keep an eye out for that. And then we'll provide updates on General Assembly as well. These aren't things you're gonna forget about or miss. Your regional officers will talk about them during delegate assemblies and everything, but we just want to make sure that you're aware of them now, so you know kind of what to expect as the year progresses. Next slide, please. All right. One other thing to mention is stipends. So as delegates, you will receive a $100 stipend if all duties are fulfilled within a given month. So that's $100 each month that you can receive for performing your duties. You can get deducted if you're not fulfilling your duties. So that means not submitting reports, not attending meetings, that kind of thing. Not participating in mandatory events. So if we have certain trainings and things that are mandatory for delegates to attend, and you're not attending those, you can get deducted for that as well. So just something to be aware of. Stipends are distributed using bill.com. So for those of you that have already submitted the delegate verification form, which I think all of you should have at this point, but you should receive an email from bill.com. If you haven't, reach out to either one of us or Deja Corbin. Her email will be available on the SSCCC website. And just notify your regional affairs director as well, so they're aware of what's going on. But that's where your stipends will be distributed. You'll have to sign in, create an account and everything. But once you're signed in, you're all ready to go. You should be good. We have had a lot of students in the past that don't check their emails and don't sign up for bill.com, and it's a hassle to chase them down and say, hey, like we have several $100s in stipends that we want to distribute to you. So please do this now on the front end before we have to go chasing people down and asking for that information once they've already graduated or moved on, and it's difficult to find them. So yeah, next slide, please.
All right, so we talked a little bit about resolutions, and we realized that we probably should go into more detail about what exactly an SSCCC resolution is and what it entails. So a resolution, as defined by the Human Rights Campaign, is an official expression of the opinion or will of a legislative body. And this is a typical part of business in Congress, state legislatures, and student government associations. So SSCCC is a student government association, and we strongly, as Sean said, it's the bread and butter of SSCCC about resolutions. So resolutions are typically submitted by a student or a group of students on a particular matter that they feel is pressing, that the SSCCC on the statewide level needs to focus on and advocate towards. So there are 6 steps to writing a resolution. You need to identify a student issue or issues. You need to draft the resolution. You need to get sponsorship and feedback. You also need to submit the resolution itself before the deadline. And then after the deadline, once you get amendments, you're going to make amendments. And then finally at General Assembly in April, you're going to present the resolution itself, where the delegates from the 117 community colleges will discuss and vote on whether or not the resolution should pass. And if a resolution passes, then that means for the next term, the SSCCC will integrate it into its priorities and make sure they accomplish whatever its resolved are talking about. Next slide. So again, a resolution has a lot of power, in my personal opinion. I think first and foremost, it can set the policy stances of the organization itself. A lot of the legislative priorities that you'll see as a Triple C focusing on, like basic needs, broad bandwidth, and providing students access to reliable Wi-Fi during the pandemic, a lot of those were actually initiated by student submitted resolutions. So this is an example of just the power a resolution can have and how that translates into student advocacy on the statewide and federal level. And another thing a resolution can do is actually address a specific statewide issue that relates to higher education. So a little similar to how it sets a broad policy stance, but your resolution can be a general, like, I think we should focus more resources towards development of basic needs resources. Or you could create a resolution regarding, say, the 50% law. That's a resolution that we had last term. So it doesn't have to be incredibly specific or incredibly broad. It can be either or. You just want to make sure, again, you have an idea of what action you want to come out of the resolution and what you want the SSCCC to do. And it's really important if you have at your college level, say your college is at the forefront of innovation regarding providing hot, fresh meals on campus, and they recently integrated a hot food vending machine on campus. And you think, I think this is something that a lot of other colleges would benefit from. And that is one avenue through which you can use the resolution. And you could create a resolution asking for the SSCCC to advocate for the statewide enforcement of hot, fresh food vending machines provided on every college campus. That's an example of a resolution you could do. And then the feasibility, the action, and the full ramification of if this resolution were to pass will be discussed and deliberated on at General Assembly. But that's just an example of really seeing how you as a student can truly enact statewide change. So if we go to the next slide.
All right, so really quickly here, we're going to go over just what a resolution looks like. You can also find these on the SSCCC website. But each resolution will have a title. It'll be demarcated by the year, and then it'll be numbered as well. So it'll be given a resolution number. Be sure that the title of the resolution accurately reflects the content of the resolution. So if you're writing about, hot meals on campus, your title shouldn't be about climate change, unless they're somehow related. So this title concisely reflects the subject matter and includes the authors and sponsors. A good place to look at kind of inspiration for titles, what it should maybe look like, how long titles should be, is the SSCCC website. You'll be able to find some good examples there. You'll have whereas statements. So statements refer to an existing priority established by the SSCCC. You'll also note the lead-in to the resolve statement in the following line. So whereas kind of set up your context. They provide background information, data, like it mentions here, prior established policy and priorities from the SSCCC. So if the SSCCC has already passed a resolution on something before, or spoken and taken a stance on something before, that could be included in your whereas statements. Notice that these are all relating to the SSCCC and the community college system. We'll kind of get into that in the next slide, where we talk about resolve statements, but resolutions can direct the SSCCC to do something or to collaborate with someone. Resolutions written about the federal government or about like state government saying therefore be it resolved that we abolish the position of governor at the statewide level. The SSCCC can't really do that. So just something to keep in mind when you're writing these resolutions. Make sure you're writing it through like a lens of, okay, what can the SSCCC do? Who can the SSCCC maybe collaborate with or talk to kind of make those changes that you're looking for. So if you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. These are the resolve statements that I was talking about. So the resolve statements include an organization that can assist with the implementation of the resolution, as I said. So maybe the SSCCC doesn't have the direct ability to change something. Well, maybe the chancellor's office of the community college system in California can do something about it, or maybe the academic senate can have some sort of sway or impact. Those bodies should be referenced in the resolve statements. You also want to make sure you're including citations. So they'll kind of go into more detail when it gets closer to General Assembly time and closer to writing resolutions. But make sure you're including citations and from reputable sources as well in your resolution. So yeah, that's just kind of what like a resolution looks like. You'll have your title, your whereas statements, your resolve statements, and your citations. And these really are what direct um, the SSCCC. Like these set the tone for the next year and set the priorities for the next year. So that's also something to keep in mind. If you're looking at writing a resolution, or if you have members of your SBA or from your campus that are interested in writing a resolution, keep that in mind that these are going to be directing kind of our policy priorities in the future, going into future years. All right, next slide, please.
And then just speaking a little bit more on resolutions. So your resolution will require some sponsorship beforehand. So sponsorship essentially means either your SBA makes an official motion or action to sponsor the resolution, saying, hey, like Evergreen Valley College supports this resolution, and they indicate so by
Just so you know, there's no sound.
Yeah, I think you froze for a minute, so if you can go back.
okay.
It's kind of, yeah.
Um, all right, continuing. We're gonna ignore that mishap. Oh, my connection is unstable. But speaking a bit about resolutions, so the resolutions will typically be submitted in mid-February, and the SSCCC will be releasing an official timeline of full of dates for you to be aware of if you want to write a resolution. And we'll also be providing resolution training workshops in both the region level and the statewide level as well as time comes closer. So don't worry, we'll prepare you a lot more as time gets closer, but please be sure to start thinking about, pressing issues in your community that you feel would translate properly into a resolution. Now, going into the regional report card, the regional report card is a monthly evaluation card that grades basically the region on how they're doing in specific metrics every month, created by the region student intern. So we have an example listed here. The metrics that are graded on is communication, accountability, attendance, budget, advocacy, collaboration, and training and content. Now, why this is relevant to you as a delegate is this is the output of seeing, okay, how is the region I'm part of doing, and how are the regional officers making sure they're getting their grades up, basically. Kind of think of it as a school report card. Say in the very first report card, your region gets a 1 in communication and accountability, and then 3 months later, it's still a 1. You have to channel your inner future parent and being like, why is it still a 1? What are the regional officers doing to address this 1? How can they get it back up to a 3? So again, as a delegate, you are in charge of keeping your region accountable as a collective and also as one as well. Because again, remember, you represent your SBA as a whole. So say you have say for communication, your region is constantly getting a 1. That means that your region is not properly communicating with its constituents, and therefore you and the other regional officers as well. And that is an issue that needs to be addressed. If you're noticing that they're consistently getting 1s, this is where you need to start asking questions, talking to the regional affairs director, saying, how can you as a delegate help improve this, and making sure essentially that your regional officers are not simply ignoring the report card, but are taking active strides to address and improve based off of the input in the report card. So again, this is a time for you to professionally review it and talk to your officers about what can the region do to be better and score all 3s by the time the report card comes out. We go to the next slide. Now, this is one of the first Q&As of the presentation, but we did throw a lot of information at you all. So do any of you have any questions on what we just covered? Anything you want us to clarify or elaborate on? And feel free to raise your hand if you have a question. And if you don't have a question, that's good. That means we answered everything. Heather, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering what forms of support are in place for a region that is struggling.
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's something that we noticed last term that was lacking. And Sean, feel free to chime in after. But For terms, what we're providing to support is first and foremost, we're standardizing not only the training of all the regional officers, which was missing last term, but we're also making sure that the development is standardized as well. So across the board, all the officers are given the same proper high quality resources. And not only that, we're ensuring that the student intern for each region is keeping their officers accountable as well. So one way on the front end is through the report cards of being like, okay, like Region 7 is getting all ones and the intern is the one completing this. So what is the intern doing to support the regional officers? And what are the officers thinking of to improve that grade? But on top of that, we're also creating more comprehensive training materials, and we're implementing new spreadsheets as well that track visually, just seeing like how many committees are meeting from each region, what is the issue going on with that. And then when we're identifying an issue or a persistent issue, then we start escalating it to the statewide officers, seeing how they're supporting, maybe initiating a one-on-one, talking about issues and action steps from there. But of course, this is all kind of being played, this is all from the beginning of the term. And as we progress, we may see a greater need for more comprehensive support. But if you have any suggestions, we'll be more than happy to hear it.
Thank you.
And
And
then
Daniel, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I had a quick question in regards to the internal regional committees. If we had a preference, you said we can let that be known.
Yeah, second days. So during during the delegate assembly, either in September or October, your regional affairs director will kind of go through this process, but there'll be an item on the agenda, stating, whatever it's titled, assignment of delegates to regional committees. At that time, you want to make sure you're letting your regional affairs director, who's going to be chairing that meeting, make sure you're letting them know, hey, I'm really interested in joining the finance committee, or I'm really interested in joining the communications committee, and letting that be known. Typically, they'll ask as well. They'll kind of open it up and say, hey, does anyone have any preferences before we assign people? That's again another way to do that. But you can also reach out before those meetings start. If you notice, you get a meeting notice. All right, we're gonna have our delegate assembly in 2 days, and you look over the agenda and you see, oh, that agenda item's on there. We're assigning delegates, at our next delegate assembly. Then you can reach out to your regional affairs director and say, hey, I just want to let you know before our meeting that I'm really interested in such and such committee. If you can maybe consider me for that committee, that'd be great. So yes, you can definitely notify. I'd say your regional affairs director is going to be the person to notify about that kind of thing.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Barsha?
Hi, I had a question about the meeting itself. Are we going to be covering Parley Pro or Robert's Rule of Order today?
Yes, we are. Right after this, we'll first be going over Robert's rules and different types of motions you can make and the general steps to handle a motion and how Robert's rules is implemented in a meeting. And then right after we talk about Robert's rules, we'll also be covering Brown Act, so the discussion of how meetings should be publicly accessible.
Okay, cool. I just had another question. What is the overall timeline for resolutions? When will we be submitting our final draft for a resolution?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, Dr. Adams, feel free to chime in, but the resolutions committee on the statewide level is going to meet soon and establish these dates, but staff will also be working on the back end of establishing the dates as well and creating a graphic to submit it out. I believe last term we sent out the dates of when the resolution timeline, basically, of when to submit, when to expect amendments, and when it'll be presented around September, October. So that's when you should expect information being sent out. And then I do want to say regarding resolutions, any information like about the timeline when it's sent out should be sent out through email, but also will be presented by your regional officers at the delegate assembly as well. And for the final draft, again, last year it was February 14th on Valentine's Day. So I would expect it to be around that same time frame as well. But we want to make sure that the resolution authors have time for us not only to review it as staff, but also making sure that you have time to make any necessary amendments if there are any identified.
Okay, great. And then I'm sorry, I do have one last question, sorry. But This is like my first SSCCC delegate meeting, and I haven't been receiving any emails before this regarding region meetings or general assemblies. And I kind of feel like out of the loop because I've been communicating with my region vice or my region chair, and I haven't really been receiving any emails. So I was just wondering like what the process was for that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for bringing that up. So what region in college are you?
I'm Region 8, and I'm the Vice President of External Affairs at Irvine Valley College.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Well, Region 8 has only had their executive board, I believe, so far. Correspondence, I'm assuming you've been in contact with Cesar, right?
Yeah, Cesar and I also talked about, he said he wanted me to be the vice chair for Region 8, and like I thought we confirmed that, but then I didn't really hear any other communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for vice chair, I'm assuming Region 8 has a vacancy in the vice chair. You should be going through a special election in September. So how Cesar should be handling that is making sure that you're given all the information, and then a special notice of 7 or 10 days in advance will be posted out and sent out to your email. If you haven't been getting any sort of SSCCC correspondence at all since before this meeting, then there is a chance that you're not subscribed to our mailing list, which will make sure you get both region and statewide meeting notices. So if you could send your email to Dr. Adams, and she's going to make sure you're subscribed on there. And from this point forward, you should be getting all the email notices directly to your email. And then I actually am from Region 8 as well, and I actually go to Irvine Valley College. I take class there. So I will also make sure personally that you're getting email notices as well and giving attention to Region 8 as well. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you so much. I'll definitely talk to you on the side. Sorry for all the questions, but thank you.
Yeah, okay, no worries. Any other questions? Awesome. Then we'll move on to the next slide.
All right, so the long-awaited Robert's Rules of Order presentation. We're getting into it right now. So if we go to the next slide. If you can just kind of think for a minute, what does a meeting need to be successful? You know, what kind of structure are you looking for? How do you provide order in a meeting? How do you make sure everyone's voice is heard and that meetings are being conducted efficiently and effectively? These are the kind of things that were thought about when Robert's Rules of Order were created. And Robert's Rules of Order are kind of a guideline, a template for people to use, you know, kind of a instruction manual of how to run meetings and how to record, you know, meeting information as well to make sure that, you know, business is being handled fairly, effectively, and efficiently. So we can go to the next slide, please. So chairing your meeting. Now this is going to be, this is information intended for chairs of the meeting, but it's also important for you to know. So as a chair, the job is going to be to ensure debate remains respectful, that everyone receives the opportunity to speak because it is their right, encourage debate, and allow for the majority to prevail. So if you notice in your meetings, you know, conversations are being cut short, or maybe you're raising your hand and for some technology reason, you're not being recognized, then it's okay to, you know, send a quick message. Hey, I just want to make sure you see that I'm raising my hand or that I'm, you know, I'm trying to participate in the meeting, and your regional affairs director or your, you know, regional officer, whoever's chairing that meeting, should be able to kind of bring you in the loop and make sure that you're being your voice is being heard.
Yeah, and then I do want to add on to, as a delegate, as you mentioned earlier, the role of the delegate is to help keep your region accountable. And this is another way for you to ensure that your rights are not being violated, basically, because Robert's Rules is a guideline to ensure that everyone has an equal and fair opportunity to speak and participate in these meetings. So like Sean said, it's really important. If you're noticing issues with how the specific chair is chairing, you should not just stay silent, because if you're staying silent, then it's difficult for the chair to actually improve on the areas that they need to improve on. So again, like Sean said, send a quick private message saying, hey, like, I noticed you're not letting so-and-so speak. I think it's really important for them to speak, or, anything regarding the matter of which you noticed. But communication and improvement is a two-way street. So again, just make sure as a delegate, if you're noticing suggestions, be professional about it, but say, hey, like, I think I noticed that during delegate assemblies, I keep raising my hand, but I'm not really getting recognized to speak. So I just want to bring that up in case you didn't notice, or, things like that. You want to be professional and but firm about these sort of things, because again, if you're not getting the chance to speak, that means that your voice and your entire SBA's voice is being silenced. So make sure you're helping keep your region accountable by being aware of what your chair is expected to do.
Thank you. So make sure your chair is also remaining impartial. So if there's an election coming up, or if your committee is voting on something, your chair is constantly nodding, or is making faces like, oh, maybe they disapprove of something, or even verbally saying, I really think we should approve this because XYZ. That's something to kind of take note of. And after the meeting, or if it's super disruptive during the meeting, then it's something to make note of during the meeting. But generally after the meeting, you want to approach the chair and say, hey, I noticed during the meeting that you were nodding your head, or you were shaking your head, or you were encouraging people to vote a certain way, or support a certain agenda item. I just would encourage you to be neutral. It's very important because you want to make sure that the decisions that are being made by the committee, especially by the delegate assembly, are being made by the delegates themselves. It's really not the role of the regional officers to sway the vote or to give their personal opinion. If they are providing information or providing background statistics or data or whatever, that's totally fine. But you want to make sure they're really not pushing the vote one way or another. Right. You can also consider, well, establishing community agreements. The SSCCC has community agreements established. So if you are noticing, the meetings are maybe not staying civil, you can say to your chair, hey, I think maybe we should go over our community agreements at the beginning of the meetings. That's something that is usually already done, but something to be aware of as well. You can say, hey, I think it's going to be a good idea for us to kind of go over those, just that everyone's in the same frame of mind going into our discussions. All right, next slide, please. All right, so there are different classes of motions. The main type of motion is, of course, a main motion. Main motions bring new business before the assembly. They can only be made when no business is pending. So no other motion is currently on the floor. That's when a main motion can be made. These are going to be the most common. So these are going to be, introducing budget votes, or introducing, stances on different policy revisions or bills. Subsidiary motions are motions that refer to the motion on the table. So they impact the way that the motion is being handled. They include motions to call the question, postpone, or amend. And remember that anyone can make these motions. It doesn't matter if you're the one that made the original motion. You can always make a subsidiary motion, or privilege or incidental motion. Privilege motions don't relate to the pending business, but are dealt with immediately. So these include motions to adjourn, to recess, or to raise a question of privilege. So, some of these don't need to be voted on. If you raise a question of privilege, it doesn't need to be voted on. And adjourn and recess do need to be voted on. There's a bunch of information online about the different specific types of motions, and whether they're voted on, whether there's discussion for the motions, that kind of stuff. What kind of vote do you need to pass an item, that kind of thing. That can all be found online. And there's tons of guides out there. So I encourage you, if you're not familiar with Robert's rules, to just do a quick Google search, look up classes of motions, and you should be able to find plenty of resources to look at. Incidental motions change the way a motion is being handled. So these are questions of procedure that don't affect the pending business itself. They're taken up immediately when when they're made. They include points of order and divisions of the question, both of which are not debatable. So those are the kind of general classes of motions. The most common ones you'll see are the main motions, introducing the business. Also, subsidiary motions you'll see kind of often, motions to amend, motions to table, that kind of thing. Motions to refer to committee as well. But those are the main ones you're going to have to deal with. All right, next slide, please. So these are quickly the steps of how to handle a motion. So the motion is going to be moved. Someone's going to make a motion. I move to blah blah blah. Let's go with golf cart example. That's been our classic when we're presenting these. So we'll go with golf cart. So I move to allocate $500 to the purchase of a new golf cart. Someone can second that motion. The person that's making the original motion needs to be recognized by the chair. They need to raise their hand and say, "Chair, I move to allocate $500 to the purchase of a new golf cart." The person who's seconding does not need to be recognized. They can just say, "I second." If there's no second, then the motion dies. This is one of those times when you want to make sure your chair is being fair and respectful to the committee. If you're realizing that, or sorry, the assembly, if you're realizing that your chair is giving 2 seconds to make a second and it's cutting people off, people are trying to make seconds and they're like, all right, no second, the motion dies. That's kind of an issue and something you want to bring up with your chair. Well, if the motion is seconded, then you'll kind of proceed with the next steps. If it's not seconded, the motion will die, and the chair will restate that as well. So the chair will say the motion on the floor was to allocate $500 to the purchase of a new golf cart. There was no second, so the motion has died. If the motion is passed, the chair will restate the motion. The chair will say the motion on the table is to allocate $500 to the purchase of a new golf cart. Excuse me. The motion has been seconded. And then the chair can ask if there are any objections. If there are objections, then the assembly will go into pro-con debate. The person who made the motion always has the right to speak first in those pro-con debates. You also want to make sure your chair is being mindful and is not, calling on 5 people that have pros and no one has cons, because then that's kind of wasting time in your meeting. If everyone's on the same page, everyone's in agreement, then really what should happen is the chair should say, okay, it seems like there's no new information coming to our assembly. No one seems to be in dissent. Then we will move on to a vote, which is step number 5. So the motion is put to vote by a chair. So the chair will repeat the motion and what each vote would mean. So repeat the motion, and then would say, a vote in the affirmative would mean that you do support allocating $500 to the purchase of a new golf cart. A vote against would mean that you do not support the allocation of $500 to a new golf cart. That should be stated by the chair to make sure that's clear. Especially when you're dealing with like amendments. Amendments can get kind of confusing. The chair should be reminding people consistently, what they're voting on and what their vote means. Make sure the motion is stated correctly. The way that the motion is stated by the chair is the way it'll be dealt with in the committee and in the assembly, and the way it'll be recorded in the minutes. So if the member of the assembly, if a delegate says, "Hey, I move to allocate $500 to the purchase of a new golf cart," and the chair repeats back, "Okay, the motion on the table is to allocate, $200 to the purchase of a new golf cart." There's a discrepancy there. You want to make sure as a delegate, you're raising your hand and saying, "Chair, I think the motion was restated incorrectly," and then that can be resolved. Ultimately, then the motion result is going to be announced by the chair. The chair will say, "Okay." After the votes have been tallied, the motion to allocate $500 towards the purchase of a new golf cart has passed. 6 votes in favor, 1 vote against, and then 2 abstentions, that kind of thing. You want to make sure the chair is announcing that result to the assembly. All right, so that was a lot of information, but if you have any questions, again, feel free to ask them during our Q&A portions. There'll be one coming up. All right, next slide, please. All right, so it's important to remember to maintain decorum during your meetings, and also that you want to make sure your debate remains efficient and respectful. So confine your remarks to the motion on the floor. If the committee is talking about the golf cart, don't go on and start talking about wanting to purchase balloons for an event coming up, or purchase flyers for a tabling that you're going to do. That conversation should not be happening while a motion is on the floor. Refrain from attacking a member's motives. So remember, you're debating the idea, not the person, is what we say here. You want to make sure you're not attacking someone's character. I think you only want to allocate the $500 because you really love driving golf carts, and I don't think that's fair. I think it's just it's a personal something personal. You want to just take it for a joyride. Like, that's kind of a personal attack. You want to make sure you're avoiding that. And something else you're going to note in that little comment there is that I was addressing remarks to the individual member of the assembly as opposed to the chair, which is also incorrect. You want to make sure that you're addressing all remarks through your chair. So if I'm debating, I would say, chair, I think it is important that we get a new golf cart. I think our, our SBA or our, ASG needs one, but I think $500 is too much. Then that person can then propose an amendment to the motion. But again, that comment is addressed through the chair and not directly towards the other person. Refrain from disruption or negativity. If someone is speaking, these are basic, basic kindergarten rules. If someone else is speaking, hold off, raise your hand, wait your turn. If you're never being recognized or, you notice that you're being ignored, that's something to then bring up, but you want to make sure you're refraining from disruption or negativity. And remember what you're there for. Ultimately, you're representing your SBA, you're representing the students on your campus. And so it's important that you're entering these meetings with respect, with dignity, and with appreciation that other people are learning, but also are doing the same thing you are. They're trying to make sure that the voices of their students on their campus are heard. So you want to make sure there's space for other people to speak during these meetings as well. While also being assertive enough to say, what, I think it's important that that the rest of the delegates are aware of how people on my campus feel. Yeah, so next slide, please. Thank you. All right. So it's kind of a review. Debate and amendments need to relate to the pending topic. Something else to keep in mind here is that if an amendment is made to a motion, so golf cart example, if someone moves to strike $500 and insert $200, and the motion is being debated, or that amendment is being debated, the debate around the debate of the assembly, while that amendment is unresolved, should only be surrounding the amendment. It shouldn't be debating whether or not the funds should be allocated toward a golf cart or not. It should only be, all right, is $500 a better number or is $200 a better number? That's the only debate that should be happening during that amendment discussion. Once the amendment is resolved and you go back to the discussion of the main motion, then you can have kind of those broader discussions about, okay, the main motion. So the chair and the assembly must ensure speakers stay on track. So this is where, again, you can hold your chair accountable, make sure that they're staying on track and are running things efficiently and smoothly. Chairs can rule that comments are out of order. So if someone's maybe getting unruly or is getting a little too passionate about what they're saying, the chair can say, all right, we're going to strike that comment, rule it out of order. It's not related to the topic on the floor. So if someone does talk about, the event that they want to hold 5 months from now, when right now the motion on the floor is about the golf cart, the chair can strike that and say, I'm going to strike that comment, it was out of order. Also refrain from filibustering or introducing a new topic through an amendment. Those, we see how that impacts things today in our own governments. We want to make sure the SSCCC stays civil. All right, next slide, please. All right, so there are several parliamentary points that you can kind of raise for different personal reasons. Points of order, they're points made to challenge the chair, so a ruling, decision, and procedure. So if you do notice that the motion was restated incorrectly, you can say, chair, point of order, the motion was restated incorrectly. It'll be dealt with. Point of information is used to seek information about an item. So if you feel like you don't have enough information to make a comment on, or make a vote on an item, but that someone else might have more information, you can ask that question to the assembly. The way you're going to do that is say, chair, point of information, I would like to know such and such. In this case, it's if Pizza Planet was contacted about a school discount rate or if this budget is based off an original price. You can also raise a point of privilege. So requesting that your rights not be violated if you want a larger font, or if you're requesting materials that were provided to other members of the assembly, but maybe weren't provided to you, you can say, chair, point of personal privilege, could I receive the handout given to the assembly? I did not receive it. And you can go from there and resolve the issue. That's just kind of how within the framework of Robert's Rules of Order, you can bring up those questions. Next slide, please. All right, so these are some common subsidiary motions. Motions to amend, motions to postpone, and then motions to refer. So if you'd like to amend a portion of a main motion, this is pretty common occurrence in meetings that's use Robert's rules. You can amend by adding something, you can amend by striking something, or you can amend by striking and adding. So in the example with the golf cart, I struck 500. I moved to strike $500 and add $200. That's how you would state that change within the scope or framework of Robert's rules. You can also move to postpone. So you know what? I don't think we have enough maybe information on this item, or someone hasn't arrived yet to speak on this item. Let's postpone it. You can do that as well. You can say, Chair, I move to postpone this item until our next meeting, or I move to postpone consideration of this agenda item until 5 p.m., that kind of thing. You can also refer items as well. So if discussion surrounding like a newsletter maybe during one of your delegate assemblies is going on, and the conversation is kind of dragging on for a long time, you can say, Chair, I don't think people have enough information, or maybe we want more prep work done. So I'm going to move to refer this to the region 4 communications committee and ask that they report back. That's totally within your purview as a delegate. All right, next slide, please. All right, we're going to really quickly practice motions, amendments, and then referrals and postponements. So if we go to the next slide.
All right, so we're gonna first talk about amending. So as Sean mentioned earlier about amendments, so we're gonna run through basically a mock agenda item and a motion. So let's say, for example, the agenda item is ASU will review and adopt a budget of $5,000 for the Spring General Assembly in Los Angeles. And say Sean makes a motion. He says, I move to adopt a budget of $5,000 for the Spring General Assembly. And say someone seconds, and then there's an objection, and then pro-con debate happens, and the general tone of the cons is, I think 5,000 is too much. I think it needs to be lowered. Someone can make a motion, amending motion saying, I move to amend the main motion by striking 5,000 and inserting 4,500. So what that does is essentially minusing $500 from the original amount. One thing to note though is per Robert's rules, you cannot go up an amount up in the amount that was posted on the agenda. You can only go down. So say someone wanted to make an amending motion to increase the amount from 5,000 to 6,000, that would not be allowed. So continuing on for this though, someone else makes a motion saying, I move to amend the main motion by striking 5,000 and inserting 4,500. Someone seconds the amendment to the motion and no one objects, then technically that passes. But this is where it gets a little complicated and tricky. The chair needs to make sure they're stating, all right, when they're at this point of the amending motion, they need to say, all right, are there any objections? Remember, the objection would not be to the main motion, but to the amendment of the motion, which is to strike 5,000 and insert 4,500. Because there will be many times where you as a delegate, maybe things are getting too complicated and you think that the chair is asking for objections on the main motion and you object, and then later you realize, oh wait, I like the amendment to the motion, I just don't like the main motion. Then that's where things get a little more convoluted. So that's why, well, one, it's important as a delegate for you to pay attention, but even more important for the chair to realize the responsibility they'll have in making it clear what is currently on floor right now and what action will mean for which motion there is. So continuing, so someone else made the motion of amending the main motion. There's a second to that motion. There are no objections. Then the amendment to the motion passes. Once the amendment to the motion passes, that means they'll go back to where they were on the main motion, but the motion is now amended. So now the main motion, instead of it being to move to adopt a budget of 5,000 for the Spring General Assembly, it is now going to be to move to adopt a budget of 4,500 for the Spring General Assembly. And then they would go back to the point of which they were at in this process of approving a motion. So if they're on pro-con debate for the main motion and they're on con and a con had just finished at the point point of someone making the amending motion, then you would go back to pro in the debate, and until either time expires or someone calls to question, which is essentially going straight to a vote on this main motion that they're currently on. So that's what amending will look like. And that's also an example of how it can get tricky with Robert's rules of, there's just a lot of different factors and a lot of things moving around at the same time. So it's really important that you make sure your chair is educating everyone and making it very clear, like, okay, like if you vote yes on this motion, it means that you approve $5,000 for the budget of Spring General Assembly. If you vote no, that means you don't approve, that sort of stuff, making sure that the chair is communicating to everyone who is voting. So that way you don't have a situation where someone's like, oh wait, I thought my vote meant this, but not that. And then you have to strike the vote, start over with voting, and it gets pretty messy to be honest. But if the chair is being diligent about communicating it, and you as a delegate are being clear about suggestions and making sure you're able to keep up as well, then these sort of situations shouldn't happen too often. We can move to the next one.
All right, so another type of subsidiary motion is a motion to divide the, or excuse me, another type of motion is to divide the question. So if the agenda item states, ASG will review and adopt a budget of 2,500 for the Fall Advocacy Academy Conference and 2,500 for the Spring General Assembly. You open up the agenda item for discussion, people are talking, and you realize, wait a minute, these kind of seem like separate items. You can make a motion to divide the question. So at the bottom of this slide, you can see that text is what you would say in the situation to divide this question. You would say, I move to divide the question so that the question of adopting a budget of 2,500 for the Spring General Assembly can be considered separately. That goes to a vote. Once the committee votes, if it passes, then you'll consider that bottom line, adopting a budget of 2,500 for the Spring General Assembly, separately from the adoption of a budget of 2,500 for the Fall Advocacy Academy. This can be done after a main motion has already been made as well. Can get a little more confusing or a little trickier, but it can totally be done. So if someone has already moved to adopt a budget of 2,500 for the Fall Advocacy Academy Conference and 2,500 for the Spring General Assembly, and there's a pro-con debate going back and forth, and someone realizes, this should be divided, this question should be divided, I think this question should be divided, then they can make that motion, and the questions would be considered separately, and you'd have that process of that we talked about earlier of voting, or sorry, pro-con debate and voting, and then restating the results of the vote. That whole process would occur separately for the budget for the Fall Advocacy Academy and then for the Spring General Assembly. Next slide, please. All right, so another common one we see is a motion to postpone. This will often happen if people don't have enough information, or also if someone hasn't showed up, as we referenced before. So in this example, the agenda item is that ASG will review and adopt a budget of 2,500 for the SBA golf cart. Someone makes a motion, says, I move to adopt a budget of 2,500 for the SBA golf cart. Debates going back and forth, and one of the people with a con says, you know what, I don't think that we have enough information. They can then say, I move to postpone consideration of this agenda item to our next regular meeting. If that motion is seconded, then it can go to a vote, and the assembly can vote, yes, agreed, we don't think we have enough information, we can postpone this, or no, we'll consider debating this item now, and go back to the main motion. Again, that can get kind of confusing, so you'll want to make sure that the chair of the meeting that you're in, if this is your delegate assembly, you want to make sure that your regional affairs director is very clear when motions to postpone or motions to amend or motions to divide the question are made, and you want to make sure that people understand what they're voting for, as Cassandra mentioned. All right, next slide, please. Okay, that was a lot of information. I'm like out of breath. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat to Dr. Adams, and we can try and get those answered. Varsha, I see you still have your hand up. I don't know if that's from your last question or if you have another question. Oh, okay.
I know Robert's rules can get a little complicated, but this is the time to ask any questions, or if you want us to clarify on anything as well. Sean and I both tend to speak pretty fast, so if there was something that we spoke really fast on, then feel free to let us know here as well. But if there are no questions, then we'll be moving on to talking about Brown Act. So if there are any questions.
I would like to say one more thing before we move on quickly. For Robert's rules and then also for Brown Act too, or really more so for Robert's rules. Brown Act is lost, that's more serious. But for Robert's rules, it's important to also give people a little bit of grace. You know, if people are not sure kind of the procedures, that's normal, especially the first like month or so. Just something to be aware of and be respectful and make sure that, you know, when you are bringing up, you know, maybe something was done incorrectly in a meeting, you're doing it respectfully and making sure that, you know, you're considering their feelings because they're probably learning how to do these things as well. So just wanted to say that before we move on.
Okay, and that also prompted me as well. As I was the president last term, so I had to chair my own fair share of meetings as well. And I really want to emphasize the idea of just giving grace to not only those participating in the meeting who may not be aware, but also the chair as well. We're all student leaders, emphasis on student, and so therefore this experience is to teach all of us. You really want to make sure you keep, you know, personal relationships or personal conflicts you may have outside of the boardroom or meetings. So we've seen a lot of situations where people will hold grudges against each other and then bring that into, you know, how they may vote on a specific motion, or, you know, this sort of nuance conversation that may bring up and everyone else is like, what what is going on? So you want to make sure, again, you're professional when it comes to maintaining Robert's rules in meetings, and also making sure you're just very communicative with the chair and with other meetings. If you feel like you need more training on Robert's rules, or if you feel like your SBA would benefit from this sort of training, the SSCCC actually provides trainings just like this to SBAs and to colleges as well. So if you would like for you know, your SBA to receive the same training because you feel like it's important for them to be aware of this as well, please reach out to Dr. Adams via the PM private message function here, and she can send you the form for your advisor to fill out. But yeah, again, just give grace, you know. Honestly, for me, like, I think I've made a mistake in every single meeting I've chaired, and that will probably be the same for whoever is chairing your regional meeting, because, you know, we're student leaders, and just be respectful of that, you know, give the grace that you would want to be given if you're in that position. So with that, if there are no questions, then we'll move on to Brown Act.
All right, so the Brown Act, or the full name, the Ralph M. Brown Act. I don't know who Ralph is, but I guess he made the Brown Act. All right, so next slide, please. So what is the Brown Act? The Brown Act is a California state law enacted in 1953 to guarantee the public's right to attend and participate in meetings of local legislative bodies. So SBAs fall under that local legislative bodies provision of this act. The Brown Act governs local agencies, legislative bodies of local government agencies created by state or federal law, and any standing committee of a covered board or legislative body, and governing bodies of nonprofit corporations formed by a public agency. So as I mentioned before, student governments fall under the provisions of the Brown Act, as does the SSCCC. The SSCCC it's not an SBA or an ASG, it's a nonprofit organization, but it does fall under the provisions of the Brown Act because it is kind of like a public entity. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so talking about the Brown Act basics, so what we're gonna be talking about is essentially first defining how a meeting is defined in the exact language of the Brown Act. And we're also gonna be differentiating between a teleconferencing meeting and then an in-person meeting, as each type of meeting will have its own provisions. And then again, going more in detail about the 3 different types of meetings that could occur under Brown Act. And then we'll also be talking about different stipulations that the Brown Act provides in regards to how meeting agendas should be created. And then finally, how meeting conduct should be. When, again, a lot of what you'll see in this presentation is going to be a lot of quotes, because we want you to see the exact language from the Brown Act and then how it's been interpreted and how it is implemented after through the language. So again, if you have any questions, be sure to write them down and we could clarify at the end of the presentation with the Q&A part. But this is essentially what we're going to be covering in these next slides. Next. So the definition of a meeting. So how Brown Act defines a meeting is any congregation of a majority of the members of a legislative body at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate upon any item that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body. So essentially what this means is, your SBA, your executive meetings, any committee meetings on your SBA, that is defined as a meeting. So if a quorum of them, which is 50% plus one member, is present, then that's going to be counted under the Brown Act. So meetings with only deliberation, which means only discussion, are still subject to the Brown Act. So say you guys are having a meeting, or if your region is having a meeting and only discussion items are happening, that does not mean it is exempt from the Brown Act, because the Brown Act is to ensure that any congregation of those meetings are accessible to the public. So you want to make sure that just because you don't have any action items on the agenda, it doesn't mean like, oh, we don't have to post 72 hours in advance because, we don't have any action. That's not true. However, if you're having a workshop or conference, if you're having a study session or a retreat, those are exempt. So you do not necessarily have to follow Brown Act. But my personal opinion, though, is the Brown Act is a law, yes, and it's a little scary. There is a thing such as Brown Act jail and a bunch of fines if you violate Brown Act. However, I believe it's a good rule of thumb to follow because the intention behind the Brown Act is to allow for members of the public to participate and also be aware of what their elected officials are doing. So I really recommend if your SBA is having a retreat or a training session, then I would really recommend still making sure the public is aware of it so that they have the opportunity to listen in, see what you guys are talking about, how the discussion is going, so on and so forth. Now, one thing I do want to emphasize as well is there is a slight stipulation where with discussion, you can talk to individual people. So say Sean, Dr. Adams and I, we're three members of the executive council or something, right? And we're voting members, and there's an agenda item on our next meeting that talks about the golf cart, right? And there's action for us to discuss the voting of it. Say I am like to Sean, hey, like I think it's really important for us to talk about the golf, for us to vote yes for the golf cart. And if it's between just Sean and I, then that's all right. Because if it's more than just Dr. Adams and Sean and I in the meeting, so there are like 10 people in that committee, and I just say to Sean, like, I think we should vote yes on this golf cart item, that in itself would be allowed. But you want to be cautious because say Sean goes to talk to Dr. Adams and Dr. Adams talks to three other people in that committee about what I said, that is called a serial discussion, and those are strictly prohibited. That's because we are influencing the vote on a future agenda item, and we want to make sure that does not happen. So personally for me, I'm terrified of the Brown Act and violating it. So I try to avoid just talking about things that I know are going to be on the agenda item, especially with just one person. So I would really recommend against it. But that's just an example of how, the law says we have to comply with and making sure we're not influencing the vote in any way. So we go to the next slide.
All right, so we're going to touch upon the meeting types. There's three different types. There's regular meetings, special meetings, and emergency meetings. These are all defined in Brown Act. And I'm going to pass it back off to Cassandra. We'll start with regular meetings.
Yeah, so if we go to the next slide. So regular meetings, these are the meetings you're most likely going to be most accompanied with. On the region level, majority of your meetings are going to be considered classified as regular meetings. So regular meetings, some stipulations with that is they allow for multiple agenda items and they must be posted 72 hours in advance, both online and in a publicly accessible location of where the meeting is being held. We're going to go into more detail about that later. But one thing to note about the regular meetings is they can actually follow a regular schedule as a result of action on behalf of the governing body. So what that's essentially saying is, say the executive board wants to meet and schedule like a recurring date for all of the regular meetings, and they're like, okay, like I move to make the second Tuesday of every month at 2 p.m. when the executive board meetings will be. That is allowed. You just need to make sure there's action taken on that for the entire group, for the entire committee to agree on, and then that could be classified under the regular meeting. So with the regular meetings, again, these are the most common ones, and hopefully if all goes well, and you'll understand why I say that when Sean goes over the next slides, these are the only meetings you'll have to deal with. Next slide.
All right, so special meetings are a little bit more special. Special meetings may be held at any time and are held to address one specific item of business. Special meetings allow for only one agenda item to be discussed. They're subject to 24-hour posting requirements. So as opposed to that 72-hour requirement, it's 24 hours. They must be made known to all voting members via written notice and website posting, also physical posting. And then special meetings should be used for special circumstances and not clerical or posting errors. So you'll notice that in our regular meetings kind of slide, we said that they can occur on a regular basis, especially if action is taken by the assembly. An assembly can't say, I move to host a special meeting on the 2nd of every month from now until December 2025. Like that's not allowed, because special meetings are meant to only be used when a regular meeting wouldn't suffice. So sometimes you have some time constraints. People need to have, especially like stances on different bills, or maybe like a resolution. It needs to be passed before a deadline, or needs to be supported or opposed by the assembly before a deadline. You can host a special meeting for that, but you can't discuss 10 resolutions in one special meeting. It should only be one resolution in one special meeting, or you should only be talking about one policy stance in the special meeting. So that's what it means by one agenda item. Yeah. Next slide, please. And Cassandra's going to be going over this one.
Yeah, so emergency meetings. So when I was going over regular meetings, I said hopefully you'll only have to go through regular meetings, because emergency meetings are extremely rare, but they do occur. So typically emergency meetings, they're different from special meetings, because emergency meetings are only held when there's prompt action needed because of an actual or threatened disruption of public facilities. So essentially what that means is during the COVID pandemic, emergency meetings were called. So, I know in Ventura, they had a wildfire, so they had to call an emergency meeting. So those are pretty dire circumstances, and they do fall under actual or threatened disruption of public facilities for the governing body to meet and discuss before COVID gets to everyone, or the wildfire disrupts their ability to meet. So that's when emergency meetings are typically held. Emergency meetings are subject to a 1-hour posting requirement, so you could tell it's very different from special or regular meetings, from the 72-hour and the 24-hour posting requirements. But the only time in which you don't have to follow the 1-hour posting requirements is, again, in the case of a dire emergency. Hopefully this will not be needed for you all. I really hope this is not something that will be relevant to you all, but that's just for you guys all to be aware of the different types of meetings that are defined under Brown Act. And again, an emergency is defined as a crippling activity, work stoppage, or other activity which severely impairs public health, safety, or both. And again, SBA should never have an emergency meeting. There should never be any need for you all to hold an emergency meeting, like I said, but this is just for you all to be aware of the different meetings that Brown Act defines and the different types of it. But seeing as how we're a student government association, there really should never be a need for you all to hold an emergency meeting, only a regular meeting, and if necessary, a special meeting. We go to the next slide.
All right, so something a lot of people will run into, especially at SSCCC, is that they're not really sure how teleconferencing works when you're dealing with these public meetings. So we're going to kind of touch upon that, and how you kind of go about joining as a member of an assembly virtually. So what is considered teleconferencing under the Brown Act? Go to the next slide, please. So the Brown Act defines teleconference as a meeting of individuals in different locations connected by electronic means through either audio or video or both. So when you're teleconferencing, there are several provisions you have to follow. So most of your delegate assemblies and regional committee meetings will be held virtually. So these are things you're going to want to make sure you're aware of going into these meetings. So the several provisions are identifying locations. So each teleconference location must be identified in the notice and in the notice and agenda of the meeting. So that means 72 hours in advance, at least 72 hours in advance, you're providing your meeting location where you're going to be teleconferencing in from. If for some reason you can't make that teleconferencing location, you cannot participate as a member of that meeting. Something to keep in mind. If you're On the road, if you're driving, you cannot participate in a meeting because that place is not publicly accessible. If you're on the freeway going, 70 miles an hour, someone can't, open your car door and say, hey, I'm joining your public meeting now. Also, you can't start at one location that's listed on the agenda and then move to another during your meeting. You have to remain in that one location the entirety of the meeting. We've had situations where students, try and get up. They have, to go to school for something, or they have, drop someone off at a practice, and they'll get up and start driving somewhere. That's a situation where they can't participate in the meeting anymore as a voting member. So agendas must be posted at each teleconference location. Again, something to be aware of is that you should have a physical agenda posted at your location. So before joining your delegate assemblies, because you are a voting member, and before joining your regional committees, because again, you are a voting member, you should be printing out a copy of the agenda and putting it somewhere publicly accessible. Finally, each location must be accessible to the public by ADA standards. So the ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act. If you live, on the third floor of a building that only has stairs, and you're trying to teleconference from the third floor of that building, you're going to be unable to do so under Brown Act because that location is not accessible to the public. All right, next slide, please. So quick pop quiz if you were paying attention in the last 30 seconds, because I talk pretty fast. Is an apartment on the second floor of a building with no elevator considered accessible? Give you all a minute to think about that one. All right, next slide, please. All right, the answer is no. As I said, all meeting locations must be accessible according to the Americans with Disabilities Act. More information about what is considered publicly accessible and the Americans with Disabilities Act can be found online. I believe it's ada.gov. Yeah, you can find all the information online if you're unsure about a location that you're planning on teleconferencing in from. Something else to note is that a lot of people will just teleconference in from their SBA meeting rooms. That's totally fine. Just make sure you're identifying not only, for example, San Diego City College. Don't just identify, all right, I'm going to be teleconferencing from San Diego City College. Their campus is big. You have to identify the building and then the room number as well. So I'm teleconferencing from San Diego City College, student activities building, room 204. And that's how the address should be listed on the agenda. All right, next slide, please.
All right, so AB 2449 is essentially a bill that was also passed that gives a little bit more flexibility, but not a lot, but a little bit more flexibility when it comes to being able to participate. So AB 2449 essentially provides that if a quorum of the legislative body participates in person, so AB 2449 basically only applies to in-person meetings. If a quorum of the legislative body is participating in person or in one central location, then a member of the legislative body can participate remotely without providing their teleconferencing address, as long as they provide prompt notice and the need for remote participation falls under one of the statutorily defined exceptions. What all those fancy words are basically saying is if your SBA, if you guys meet every Wednesday at 3:50 p.m., right? But then and you have quorum of them, so say you have 10 people in your committee and 6 of them are there in the location because it's an in-person meeting, and then suddenly someone is has a medical emergency, right? They will still be able to participate under AB 2449 and Zoom in, as long as, again, you guys have 6 people in that meeting in person in one location, and that person will need to have their audio and video on. And you can only use AB 2449 for 2 consecutive meetings. So again, the provisions, you have to meet quorum in a single physical meeting location, and that location has to be identified on the agenda. And the person who is participating under AB 2449 must have both audio and video on at all times. And another thing is AB 2449 cannot be used for more than 3 consecutive months, or 20% of the regular meetings within a calendar year, or more than 2 meetings if your body only meets fewer than 10 times per calendar year. Now, there are a couple other additional provisions, like if there is anyone in the room that is over 18 with that member, they have to disclose if that person is in the room. So they have to say hey, oftentimes, for me, like for me, if I'm like with my mom for some reason, right, and I'm participating under AB 2449 and she's in the room listening, I will need to say, oh, my mom's in the room. So that's a little funny example, but that she's since she would be over 18, you would need to disclose that if you're under AB 2449. And also if AB 2449 is executed, so someone in your body is using AB 2449, all votes must be performed by roll call. You cannot use unanimous consent. And then also there's the different stipulations, like different very strict exceptions for allowing AB 2449. Basically, it can only be used if their person has a physical or medical emergency, if they have a contagious illness, if they're caretaking or childcare, or if they're traveling related to your organization, or if they have a physical or mental disability not already accommodated. So a lot of times what I see AB 2449 being used is, we have student parents at my SBA and they had a sitter for their child, but then their sitter bailed out last minute. So they need to stay home and take care of their child. They would be allowed to use AB 2449 because they fall under child caretaking. I've used AB 2449 because if I'm traveling on behalf of the organization for my SBA and the travel overlapped with the meeting, then I could still participate remotely because the travel I'm taking is related to the organization part of. I just need to make that clear and state that that is the reason of which I'm participating under AB 2449. So again, AB 2449 is not going to be used in a situation of someone just doesn't feel like driving to the campus or the location. It's very strict. And of course, we, as the CCC personally feels that there should be more flexibility regarding the Brown Act. But until that bill is passed and we make that change, we use AB 2449 to allow for members who have these very strict circumstances to still be able to participate and not be deducted for it. Now, if we can move on to the next slide. So meeting agendas. The Brown Act doesn't have too much on meeting agendas, but what it does have is it essentially says that, again, you'll see this language here, no action or discussion shall be undertaken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. So essentially when you post the agenda, you need to state, first of all, note like which items are action or which items are just discussion. So say for the golf cart, right? If you put that on the posted agenda and you don't note it as action, you can't take any action because you did not put that on the agenda. And that's what needs to be happening. But additionally, a different circumstance is say the golf cart isn't even on the posted agenda and then discussion is starting to happen on the golf cart. That cannot happen as well because you did not say that you're going to be talking about the golf cart situation on your posted agenda. So that's one thing that the Brown Act says about the meeting agendas. And additionally, under each agenda item, you have to provide enough information in the description to inform the public, but the description can't exceed 20 words. So you want to keep a descriptive but concise idea of what each agenda item is about so that the public can be aware of it. And then also on the agenda itself, it has to specify the time and location of the meeting. And it's really important, again, you have this because in Brown Act, if we don't follow it, you can get fined and worse, like Brown Act jail. But that's been very, very dire circumstances. But again, just recapping for meeting agendas, each agenda item has to have a description that does not exceed 20 words. You also need to make sure that any action or discussion that you would like to be seen is on the posted agenda, and the agenda has the time and location of the meeting itself. We will move to the next slide.
All right, so this is an example of what an agenda should look like. Kind of see the difference between a discussion item and an action item. So up top, you can see the discussion item. During a discussion item, no action may be taken. Discussion items are intended to provide information and have discussions. It does not require a quorum to occur. So if someone's trying to get a gauge of when we should maybe have our next meeting, without taking action to vote on setting an actual meeting date, or a budget has already been approved for whatever, like an event, and you want some discussion surrounding like the actual logistics, planning out the event itself, who's going to be there, who's not going to be there, that kind of stuff. That can take place in a discussion item. Then you have an action item. Action items are intended for the body to take formal action. You need quorum to be able to take action. So quorum, if you're not aware, is defined as 50% of the members of a legislative body plus one. So if you have 10 people, it's going to be 6 people would be quorum. If you have 11 people in your legislative body, 6 people would also be quorum because it's 50% plus 1. Weird how that works, but it's basically the majority of the members. So yeah, something to note with action items. The item itself should be kind of noted that it is action. You want to make sure that items where action may occur are labeled as action items. So if the chair is unsure about whether or not something might cause action to occur, you're going to want to just be on the safe side. You're going to want to make sure that it's labeled as action, so that your governing body can take action on the item if necessary. So again, if you notice your chair, your regional affairs director, or maybe one of your regional officers is trying to take action on something that's listed as a discussion item, you want to make sure you're calling that out and saying, hey, on the agenda, it's listed as a discussion item, so we actually can't take action on this item until, if you want to reset and bring it up at a future meeting, that's okay. But right now we can't take action on that item. All right, next slide, please. All right, so posting the agenda. So the agenda must be posted in a location that is freely accessible to the public, as we mentioned. So some common things that people run into are if an agenda is posted in a building that is locked to the public over the weekend, that time does not count towards the required 72 or 24-hour posting requirement. So say, for example, your ASG meeting room is on, I don't know, it can be on the first floor of a building, but if it's not, the building itself isn't open 24 hours a day, then you won't be able to count, each day towards that total 72-hour or 24-hour posting requirement, because the agenda itself, the physical agenda, isn't accessible by members of the public. So if people can't come up and read it freely, then it's not considered accessible to the public, and that time does not count towards the posting requirements. A regular or special meeting agenda must be posted on the student government website if you have one. So a lot of SBAs or ASGs do have student government websites at this point. The SSCCC, because we do, again, fall under Brown Act, we do have the website, and we do make sure we post our agendas on the website at least 72 hours in advance of our regular meetings. But also note that posting on the web is not a substitute for posting the hard copy. So if, for example, a delegate assembly agenda has been posted on the SSCCC website, that doesn't mean, oh, I as a delegate don't have to post my agenda anymore. You still have to post a physical copy of your agenda if you're teleconferencing it from a teleconference location. All right, next slide, please.
All right, so meeting conduct. Again, for this first part, it's going to be talking about public participation. So you have to allow for the public to comment on matters on the agenda, either before the consideration of the item. So you could have a public comment section in the very beginning of your agenda. So that way the public will have a space to talk to those who are voting on matters on the agenda. Or they should be allowed to speak during the consideration of the item. So say we're going to bring back the golf cart example. Say for the golf cart example, there's an item to approve funds for the golf cart, and say you guys are currently on the golf cart item, and a member of the public raises their hand and would like to speak on this matter, and you did not provide a public comment section for them to speak on this previously, then you should be allowing for them to speak during the consideration of the golf cart item as well. And again, you can also adopt reasonable regulations on the time allotted for public testimony. What this is saying is you could put a max on how long they can speak. As a CCC, we give public comment 3 minutes per speaker and then 15 minutes per topic. So that's an example of reasonable regulations. And I do want to say for quorum, like Sean said, 50% plus 1 voting member present is quorum. So if you have 10 voting members and 6 of them are present, that's quorum. And if you have no quorum, you cannot take action. However, you can still meet if you only talk about the discussion items. We typically suggest against it, because if you don't have quorum, then that means majority of your committee is not there. So they're not present for the discussion that's happening on an item. But if you are just having a roundtable on what everyone did on the month, then that discussion can happen without quorum. And typically this happens when you are waiting on just one more member and they're just a little bit late, then you can just go over the discussion items to get time. And then once that member needed for quorum shows up, then you could go and continue the agenda and go over the action items as well. So that's what the Brown Act says for meeting conduct. We go to the next slide.
So one more thing to note quickly on connecting a meeting. So in our SCCC meetings, we always have a space at the beginning of the meeting for members of the public to be able to give public comment. So just be aware that that is a space where people are able to give their comments. You know, if discussion is happening later in the meeting and you're kind of running out of time, it's getting late, and you know, a member of the public wants to give input on an agenda item, but they already had that opportunity earlier in the meeting, the chair of the meeting does not need to allow them to provide a comment during that agenda item if they don't think it's necessary, or if there's, you know, no time for that. Just want to make sure that's clear.
And yeah, adding on real quick too, I would suggest making sure your voting members are also given the chance to speak. And my personal rule of thumb is making sure voting members get a priority. So say you have a member of the public who rose their hand to speak and they've already spoken on this matter, but then you have a voting member who rose their hand to speak. That voting member will ultimately be the one who is voting on the item itself. So I would recommend in that type of situation deferring to the voting member, because they most likely will have a question on the item and they will be the one voting. But this is not to say that you should not recognize that member of the public, because public opinion is still incredibly important. But when it comes to voting members, if their vote is uninformed or they have a question, but the chair spent too long recognizing members of the public consideration, then that will also be an issue as well. So just finding that balance and making sure that that is respected is really important. Now, going into the Q&A, this is the last Q&A and we are wrapping up today. So if you have any questions on not just Robert's Rules or Brown Act, but on anything else regarding SSCCC in general, what to expect, any clarification, now is the time to ask it. So feel free to raise your hand and then we will be able to answer your questions. Giselle?
I have two questions. Just clarifying. For the point of contact for the delegates meeting, where can we find that?
Yeah, so can I ask what region and what college you're from?
Yes, Region 4, Mission College.
Yeah, so the regional affairs directors, they will have the same email. So Dr. Adams, if you could put in the chat RAD Region 4's email, but it will essentially be RAD region and then the Roman numeral of the number. So for Region 4, it will be IV@ssccc.org. So that will be where you can get their email, and Dr. Adams put it in the chat here as well. So you can contact them as well. But if you're not sure who to contact as well, I'm actually helping out Region 4 until they get a student intern. So if you have any questions, you can also reach out to me as well. Dr. Adams, if you could put my email in the chat as well. But it's also just my name, Cassandra, at ssccc.org. But that was where you would get their email. What's your second
Sounds
question?
My second question was, who do we contact for the bill if we haven't received anything? The bill.com.
Yeah, you
Sorry,
would contact Deja. You would
Oh, you're-
contact you would contact Deja Corbin. Dr. Adams can put her email in the chat here, and then you can also contact Dr. Adams as well. But Deja will be she's our executive assistant for SCCC, and she handles, you know, everything regarding that. So please reach out to Deja Corbin. Her email is in the chat right now to make sure that gets set up for you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Awesome. Well, if there are no other questions, you can always reach out to either Sean or I or Dr. Adams if you think of them after this meeting. Hopefully this meeting was super helpful for you. If we could go on the next slide real quick. So shameless plug, here is our social media here. We really recommend following us on social media, as that is where we will be posting updates on what SSCCC is doing, as well as upcoming trainings that are happening, giving information about Advocacy Academy or General Assembly. And I would also recommend taking a look at our website, which is listed down below there. This is where you'll get all the information regarding SSCCC, finding the points of contact for your region, and knowing who to talk to about which items. etc. So I would really recommend some of you, take a picture of this, follow us on Instagram, and also take a look at our website. But if there are no other questions, then thank you all very much for coming to the very first delegate training. I hope this is super helpful. Again, if you think of any questions or you would like clarification, feel free to reach out to us. And I do want to emphasize once more, if you feel like your respective SBA would benefit from a training similar to what we gave to you all, or not only that, if you feel like your SBA would benefit from a different topic, SSCCC provides different types of trainings like this, both virtual and in person, if possible. So please reach out to Dr. Adams or Sean or I, and we could help direct you towards the form where you could fill it out and get the appropriate training for your SBA. But with that, thank you all so much for coming, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye, everyone. And if we could stop